Welcome back to my channel. Today we are filming on my Canon G7X. We'll see how it goes. I really want to get comfortable using this camera to film instead of just using my phone to film. I remember wanting this camera so badly so that I can start my YouTube journey, and I've had this camera for so many years. For some reason, when it comes to using it, I just get really intimidated. So I'm kind of playing around with settings. I'm gonna see what this looks like. I just want better quality content for you guys. In today's video, we are going to be going back in time a little bit. We're gonna be time traveling. I'm gonna take you guys on a walk down memory lane. I figured today I would talk about the time that I moved to Las Vegas on my own with hardly anything to my name. I know this video is very different from the content that I've put out on my channel so far. I figured I would throw in content that might not necessarily pertain to my everyday life now. However, this type of content I feel is necessary for people to really get to know how far I've come along. I'm very proud of where I'm at now. I'm very much in my soft mom era, and I'm living my best life, and things are very calm for me right now. Whereas in my past, my life used to be very, very hectic. And it was very much my own doing, the reason why my life was so hectic. But if you were to sit me down and tell me, give me a glimpse into a crystal ball and show me what my life would be like today, I would have a very hard time believing it. Let's just say I lived every day like it was my last, okay? My 20s were quite the time for me to be alive. Let's just say that. It was a lot of trial and error. It was a lot of getting to know myself. It was a lot of soul searching. It was a lot of finding myself. You know, I learned a lot about myself in that time. I believe it was around 2014. I remember being 24 at the time. I studied fashion design at an art school in San Francisco, met my then partner in school, and once I graduated with my Bachelor of Fine Arts, we both decided to leave San Francisco. San Francisco tends to be a city that's very gloomy, and with the tall buildings and whatnot, the sun really doesn't shine the way that it would in Southern California. I think that's a big difference with Northern California and Southern California. Southern California is just very sunny, beautiful weather pretty much all the time. You know, you have beaches. It's just really nice, and we were ready for a change. I had been living in San Diego for about 3 years at this point. I was very unhappy in my relationship at that time. Now, when I moved to San Diego, I really didn't see our relationship lasting for much longer. There was just already some bumps in the road, some little rough patches, just things that I noticed that didn't really sit well with me. But I figured maybe trying our luck in a different environment, switching things up, maybe change the dynamic of our relationship. So I was willing to give it a try. 3 years in, I knew it was time to get out of that relationship and do some soul searching. In your early 20s or entering into your 20s, you know, your brain doesn't fully develop until you were 24. So we had both changed, and we just kind of grew apart, okay? So we both came to the general consensus that it was time to end the relationship. However, we were living in a one-bedroom apartment together. I believe we were paying about $1,400 a month. It was about to be raised to $1,600 a month. We split everything 50-50, all the bills, rent, everything was split 50-50. And at the time that we had agreed to separate, we still ended up living together. Now, obviously, that's not the ideal situation for someone who is going through a breakup. So your girl was really starting to explore different options. At the time, I would have loved to stay in San Diego. I actually really enjoyed my time in San Diego. Became a vegan in San Diego. I started my fitness journey in San Diego. It was so incredibly expensive. San Diego is not designed for a single person to live comfortably on their own. Mind you, this was about 10 years ago or so I can only imagine what it's like now with inflation and everything. At the time, I worked in retail. For those of you who are familiar with San Diego, I worked in Fashion Valley Mall. Now, the money that I made as a lingerie wardrobe stylist was decent. However, it wasn't enough for me to really be able to go at it on my own. Now, it was a commissioned retail position, so it was part of our job to actually get familiar with our clients, be friendly with clientele. This guy used to come in like every week, you guys. I don't know what it was that he did for a living, but this man had money. Because let me tell you, our lingerie that we sold in the store was not cheap. I'm talking, it was normal to come in and drop anywhere from $200 to $500 on just one set. One bra, one panty set. This was very fine European lingerie. So naturally you had to have a good amount of money to be able to afford these pieces. This guy would come in every week or so. We'll call this guy Paul. So a couple weeks go by, Paul ends up coming into the store, and naturally we start conversating. I start asking him where he's been. I hadn't seen him in a while. He lets me know that he just came back from Vegas. Come to find out, he does annual business trips to Las Vegas. He stayed in an Airbnb in a really nice area off the strip. And he was basically just showing me pictures and just sharing little aspects about his trip with me. So I want to say that's where the seed for Las Vegas was originally planted. I remember going home that night and just out of curiosity started looking up different apartments in Las Vegas. And I used Craigslist for everything. It's how I actually found my wardrobe styling job, was on Craigslist. It's how I found the apartment that my then partner and I were sharing, was through Craigslist. You know, Craigslist wasn't the creepy place that it has become today. I literally would go to Craigslist for everything. So naturally I go on Craigslist and I type in Las Vegas. I start looking at 1-bedroom apartments out there. In addition to that, I'm on Apartment Finder, going to all these different apartment websites, just kind of scoping it out and just getting a general idea of cost of living in that area. I decided I was going to plan a trip and just kind of scope it out and just see what Vegas had to offer. I ended up coming upon some vacation time, gassed up my little Nissan Xterra, and I was on my way. I did arrive during the day, and it was like an overwhelming sense of calm. I was pleasantly surprised. I found the desert to be very beautiful, very serene, very tranquil, very peaceful. I found this complex that was a gated complex. It had 24-hour security and surveillance. It was called the Borgata. Now, I think the name has changed since then, but this complex will always have a special place in my heart. It was the right price point for me. Everything about it just spoke to me. I knew that this was going to be the place for me. I ended up submitting an application. So a little bit of time ends up going by. You know, at this point, obviously I'm back in San Diego. I get a call while I'm at work letting me know that I did indeed get approved for the apartment. I was so excited for this new chapter that was getting ready to open up in my life. Now at this point, I did had close to about $3,000 saved up. I would have loved to transfer. However, the company that I worked for at the time did not have any stores located in Las Vegas. So I knew that I would be moving there without any work lined up, without any sense of income. I was very confident in the fact that I'd be able to find work relatively quickly. Upon my arrival to my new apartment, I immediately started looking for work pretty much right away. I had always worked retail up till this point. I had never really considered anything other than retail. I went out and searched for work pretty much daily. I was relentless. I knew I needed a job. Yeah, you guys, money was running out very quickly, and at this point, before I knew it, a whole month had gone by and I still had no job and no prospects of getting a job anytime soon. So naturally, your girl was starting to freak out. I was really starting to worry as to if I had even made the right choice in moving to Las Vegas. Why is it taking me so long to find a job? I just didn't understand. I've never had this problem before ever in my life. I have always been able to find a job pretty much right away. I remember walking around the casinos and kind of just looking around at what people were doing for work. I started applying to positions for cocktail serving in casinos. I remember coming across this ad on Craigslist, and I don't know if I just didn't read it thoroughly or what, but for some reason I thought I was responding to a cocktail server position. Now, this company portrayed themselves on Craigslist as somewhat of a modeling agency. They did request for you to send headshots and bikini pics to even be considered for an interview. In my young and naive mind at the time, I saw absolutely nothing wrong with sending strangers pictures of my body. Couldn't say I would do the same, knowing what I know now and in today's world and society. I think there was a hint of desperation involved in me doing this. I kind of had the mindset of, okay, you know what, whatever. They say that they work with casinos, they're an agency. I did Google search them at the time, and they were a legit agency, okay? So that kind of solidified my opinion with being okay with sending them the pictures that I needed to send them. And later that evening, I actually ended up hearing back from them, and they were interested in bringing me in for an interview the very next day. They requested that we wore just very simple jeans, t-shirt, and upon arriving there, I noticed that there was quite a few other girls walking into the same building as me. I walk in, and sure enough, yes, there's, I want to say, about 8 other girls there in addition to myself, and we were told basically to just all stand in a straight line. Gave us the rundown about the company, what it was that they did for casinos, and they informed us that they were looking for models to work in the party pits of mainly downtown casinos. They did staff a little bit on the Strip, but this was more so like a starter position, an entry-level position, if you will, for dealing. At the time, I had no idea what they meant when they said dealing. I'm like, okay, like dealing? I thought I was applying to a cocktail server position. No, dealing. I sat down for my one-on-one interview. I had so many questions. What's a party pit? Like, what's a dealer? What am I gonna be dealing? You know, like, I mean, I'm down. Like, your girl's pretty desperate at this point, but like what are we dealing? You know, I had never played blackjack. I had never gambled a day in my life. I didn't know anything about gambling or about table games or about dealing. They informed me that they are looking for blackjack dealers. I informed them that I don't even know what that is. They say, you know what, that's okay, because part of what we do here at this agency is we train you to learn how to deal blackjack. And not only to learn how to deal blackjack, but we can train you to learn how to deal other table games as well. And I'm just like thinking to myself, like, okay, yeah, bet, you know, it sounds like a deal. Like, that sounds absolutely freaking amazing. I'm gonna learn like a new trade, basically. I'm gonna learn how to deal blackjack. Like, how exciting is that? There was a bit of a catch. They're not just gonna take you on and assume all the responsibility, teaching you how to deal blackjack just for you to run off and go work at another casino, right? You do have to sign a contract. Within the outlines of this contract, which I didn't really care to read all the outlines of the contract personally. I just let them kind of go through and tell me what the contract basically said, you know, the highlighted points of the contract, which I definitely don't advise anybody out there to ever do. Always read your contracts, take your time, even if you feel rushed. there's nothing wrong with telling somebody like, hey, I need some time to review this. Is it okay if I take this contract home with me and read it over? I'm very interested in your offer, but all I need is a little bit of time to read this over. But you guys, I was so backed into a corner. I was literally scared because, like I said, a whole month had gone by at this point. Savings was dwindling. I had already paid my rent for the new month that was coming, and other bills were going to be due soon. So I really didn't care about what was in the contract. I figured it couldn't be anything too crazy. You know, it was basically like a typical modeling contract. So we were required to keep our appearances up. They expected for us to come to work every day. Stage ready is what they would call it. So fully made up, hair done, you know. We always had to have makeup on, and we had certain outfits that we had to wear. So on top of that, we were expected to maintain a certain weight. We can only fluctuate maybe like a few pounds or so within our weight range. Okay, so whatever weight that we sign up as is the weight that we were expected to maintain. And they did weigh us upon acceptance into this agency. In addition to that, we were expected to work with the agency as well as the casino assigned to us through that agency for a full year. To me, those terms didn't sound bad at all. Your girl needed a job, and I knew that it was going to take some time to learn how to deal blackjack, being that I had never done this before. I'm thinking, okay, it shouldn't be that complicated. Like, it's literally a game, right? I just have to learn how to play this game and I can start making money. I'm gonna be in and out of training within a week. I played myself. I start training to learn how to deal blackjack pretty much immediately. I want to say I started a little bit later on in that week. The place that we would go to be trained was low-key a little sketch. It was located in some seedy downtown casino. Like, I remember we'd have to get on the elevator and like press the button to go down to the basement, and it was like dark and old and kind of stinky in there. Which basically, you would walk into this room, there would be several tables. Each table had 5 to 6 seats on one side with 1 seat on the other side. So these were the blackjack tables that we were going to sit and learn how to deal cards. Now, when I moved to Vegas, I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any friends. So this training program is actually where I met my first friend in Las Vegas, and I'm still friends with her till this very day. I just remember walking into the room and just seeing her face light up. Long, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jersey girl with a strong accent, and I walked into the room, our eyes met, and it was like something in her recognized something in me, and our souls spoke to each other. And she was just so peppy. She was literally a bright light in a room full of darkness. She was the most beautiful soul, most beautiful spirit, still is till this day. And I just remember walking into the room, and I'm just like looking around, kind of like scoping the room out. And she's already there sitting at this table, and she pats the chair next to her and she's like, oh, you can sit right here. Come sit here. I stroll on over, I sit down, and she's like, my name is Kelly. And I'm like, hi Kelly, my name is Sasha, nice to meet you. We start talking and we just clicked, like fireworks went off, you know, and we just fell in love with each other, okay? Like, we just became best friends right away, and we stuck together throughout this training program. We actually stuck together so much that I feel like we started to hinder each other's learning capabilities within the classroom. I've never really been a mathematical person, okay? My brain just doesn't work that way. And Kelly was and still is till this day a jewelry designer. She was also very fashiony, very artsy. Our brains kind of work similarly in that sense. We did have a very hard time picking up on how to deal blackjack, how to master this game. I remember at times we would get so distracted with each other and just goofing off and just, you know, completely not interested in learning this game that they would literally separate us and put us almost closet-like rooms that they would put us in, and it would just be one table in the room, and they would give us each a deck of cards and be like, here, just sit here, count these cards, count until you get to 21, and we're not gonna let you leave this room until you have this concept down. And we literally just felt like we were being punished because we just weren't learning fast enough, you guys. And it got to the point where, like, as girls were learning this game, they were being transferred out of training and being assigned their casinos. So over the course, like, as days were going by and then eventually weeks were going by, our classroom was dwindling down in size. I want to say we started with maybe like 20 girls, and then it had gotten down to like 15 girls, then 10 girls, and it just kept dwindling. And honestly, at this point, I was approaching the end of another month, and I want to say maybe I had like $400 to my name at this point. Like, I really was starting to get really worried. That wasn't even going to be enough to cover my rent. I hadn't even started working. Mind you, the training program was paid, so thank God for that, but I think we were making like $7 an hour. So, and we were there for like 6 to 8 hours a day. I want to say, yeah, I want to say it was like 6 hours a day that we were training. At least it was something, but it definitely wasn't enough. It was enough to feed me and keep gas in my car to keep going to training. So I really should have taken training a lot more seriously, but it's pretty clear looking back at my life during that time, I don't think I really took anything seriously, you guys. I was very just carefree, you know. I trusted that things would always work out for me, and usually it did. Kelly was a very social person. Through her, I actually ended up meeting and making other friends. We'll call them Wendy and Sarah. So that was kind of like our little clique. Through hanging out with them, I actually was able to find other ways of keeping myself afloat. They knew quite a few guys who were, I guess you could call them like high rollers. So between the two of them, they kind of had like their own little roster of guys that they knew. I know Wendy was dating a guy. So we would get invited to go out with them, gambling. And this guy, I can't for the life of me remember his name, but honestly, shout out to him because he ended up saving my ass on a few different occasions, and I don't even think he realized it. Whenever we would go out and gamble with him, he would give us each $100. And his whole thing was, okay, you girls are learning how to deal blackjack. We're gonna go out, we're gonna gamble, we're gonna play blackjack. I'm gonna teach you guys how to get familiar with everything so that y'all can excel in your job. So we would go out with him and we would gamble. I knew that I needed to do something to get my coins up. I saw this as a major opportunity to take advantage of. Every weekend when we would go out and he would hand me my $100 to gamble with, I would always pocket half of it and then I would gamble with the other half. Now, there was occasions where I lost all my money, but I still had the $50 that I had pocketed. And on the occasions where I did win money, you know, I would win a nice little chunk of change. So if I didn't at least double my money, sometimes I'd make a little bit more or I'd make a little bit less. I did end up profiting off of going out and gambling, and it was through doing this, your girl was able to make just enough money to stay afloat. Now, remember I told you I was vegan, right? I remember going to the store, getting rice, getting avocado, getting little packs of like those little seaweed wraps that you get. They're like individually wrapped. And I would make myself little vegan avocado sushi. Many occasions I would eat that and I would get full off of that. When you work for the casinos, they do provide one meal that you can kind of just like go to the cafeteria and get, depending on what they're serving that day. So many times I would go to the cafeteria and I would see what they had that was vegan, and that's basically how I would survive food-wise. If I wasn't eating avocado, rice, and seaweed, I was scrounging for whatever vegan vegetables, beans, whatever I could find in the cafeteria during lunchtime. So that's how your girl was making it. You know, I was in my empty ass apartment, sleeping on an air mattress. And you know what? I was living my best life. I really was. I had left a situation in San Diego that was beginning to turn very toxic for me. and I was making lemonade out of lemons, basically. I didn't care that I was in this big empty apartment by myself with hardly anything in it. It was all mine, and I didn't have to share it with anyone. And it was affordable enough to where I could pay it on my own, you know, or if I didn't have a means to pay it, I could find a means to pay it. It was almost like the world was my oyster, like anything was possible. So eventually I did make it out of training, you guys. It did take me, I want to say like a whole month. So now I was able to be placed in a casino, and I was able to start working pretty much right away. I started to get really good at blackjack, and of course, now that I was placed in a casino, I was able to practice dealing more, and I just became very familiar and very comfortable with the game. Through me going out and gambling here and there, I actually was very smart about the way that I handled my gambling. I wouldn't necessarily call it an addiction or anything like that, but I would say I did get very comfortable with gambling. I did get really good at gambling. I ended up meeting quite a few people through going and playing blackjack at the tables. Always give myself a limit. Wouldn't let myself lose any more than that. I would get out if I was on a losing streak. I really just started to understand the concept of the game. Really, it's not necessarily about winning or losing, it's knowing when to leave the table. I would say blackjack was a blessing and a curse in a lot of different ways. From then on, like, it was pretty much smooth sailing. You know, I was settling into Las Vegas very nicely. I got introduced to doing hot yoga, and that became basically a staple in my life. I was learning so much about myself. I was growing as a person, and it really was a good time for me in the beginning. You know, I was really able to do a lot of soul searching, and I really found myself to an extent. And I say that because I am filming this video with the intention of doing a part 2. Basically, my Vegas downfall, what made me decide to leave Las Vegas. Basically, it was going really well for me until it wasn't, and I will cover that in part 2, you guys. So stay tuned. Please subscribe down below so that when part 2 gets posted, you'll be the first to know. I think that's gonna be it for today. You know, your girl moved to Las Vegas with literally next to nothing, and we started from the ground and worked our way up. So find out what happens next in part 2. Until next time, thank you guys. Bye.